My name is Dorothy Mitchell, and this is the story of how one violent night in my Indianapolis home forced me to make the hardest decision of my life, a decision that would either save my son or destroy what was left of our family forever. I'm 71 years old, a retired school teacher, and I've lived in the same house in the Fountain Square neighborhood for 43 years. It's a modest brick ranch with a small front porch where morning glories climb the railings every summer, and a backyard where my late husband Frank planted tomatoes that still come up every year, stubborn and wild. Frank passed away 8 years ago from complications of diabetes, leaving me alone with our son, Marcus, who was 34 at the time. Marcus was our only child, our miracle baby. I had 3 miscarriages before him, and when he finally arrived healthy and screaming, Frank and I thought God had finally answered our prayers. We raised him with all the love we had, maybe too much love, the kind that shields and protects until the child never learns to face the world on their own. Frank worked at the Chrysler plant for 30 years, and I taught third grade at school 44. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, and we made sure Marcus never wanted for anything. He was a good student, played basketball in high school, graduated with decent grades, and went to IUPUI for 2 years before dropping out. That's when things started to slide. At first, it was just laziness. He couldn't keep a job for more than a few months. There was always an excuse. The boss was unfair, the coworkers were against him, the hours didn't work. Frank tried to be firm with him, told him he needed to be a man and take responsibility. But I made excuses, smoothed things over, let him come back home when he needed a place to stay, just until he got on his feet. After Frank died, Marcus moved back in permanently. He was supposed to be helping me with the house, with the bills, with the burden of living alone. Instead, I became his caretaker all over again. He worked sporadically, contributed nothing, and spent most of his time in his old bedroom playing video games or on his phone. Over the past 3 years, things had gotten worse. Marcus started drinking, not socially, but heavily daily. He'd come home at odd hours, smelling of cheap vodka and cigarettes, stumbling through the house, knocking things over. When I'd try to talk to him about it, he'd snap at me, tell me to mind my business, remind me that he was a grown man and didn't need his mother lecturing him. I started to walk on eggshells in my own home. I'd make his favorite meals, keep the house quiet when he was sleeping off a hangover, avoid any topic that might set him off. My friends from church noticed the change in me. I stopped hosting our prayer group, stopped attending social events, made excuses about why they couldn't visit. The violence started small, a shove here when I was in his way, a door slammed so hard it cracked the frame, objects thrown, a remote control that shattered against the wall, a coffee mug that exploded on the kitchen floor. Each incident was followed by apologies, tears, promises that it would never happen again, and like a fool, I believed him every time. 3 weeks ago, I'd worked up the courage to ask him to contribute to the grocery bill. My pension barely covered the mortgage and utilities, and feeding 2 people, especially when one of them ate like Marcus did, was straining my budget. I approached it gently, lovingly, after making his favorite Sunday dinner: fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, collard greens, cornbread. "Baby," I said as he pushed back from the table, "I hate to bring this up, but with food prices going up the way they are, I was wondering if maybe you could help out a little bit with the groceries. Even $50 a month would help." The change in his face was instant. The contentment from the meal vanished, replaced by a cold fury. "Are you serious right now?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I do everything around this house, fix things, take out the trash, mow the lawn, and you want me to pay you for the privilege of eating? Marcus, I'm not trying to. You're never satisfied, are you?" he shouted, standing up so abruptly his chair fell backward. "Nothing I do is ever enough. Dad would be ashamed of you, you know that, charging your own son rent like I'm some kind of tenant." I tried to explain, to clarify, but he stormed out of the house, leaving me to clean up the dinner in silence, my hands shaking as I scraped his half-eaten food into the trash. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, the tension had been unbearable. Marcus would go days without speaking to me, walking past me in the house like I was invisible, eating the food I cooked without acknowledgement, leaving his messes for me to clean up. The silent treatment was punishment, and it was working. I was terrified of pushing him further, of losing my son completely. Last night, everything came to a head. It was a Wednesday, around 11:30 at night. I was in bed but not asleep, listening to an audiobook on my tablet, trying to calm my anxiety enough to rest. I heard the front door open, then slam shut with such force that the walls shook. Heavy, uneven footsteps in the hallway, the crash of something falling. Later, I'd find my grandmother's vase in pieces on the floor. I got out of bed and put on my robe, a thick terracloth one I'd bought from Kohl's last winter. My hands were already shaking as I tied the belt. I knew from the sounds that Marcus was drunk, possibly drunker than I'd ever seen him. I should have stayed in my room, locked the door, waited for morning. But the mother in me, the foolish, hopeful mother, thought maybe I could help him, get him some water, guide him to bed. I found him in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, a bottle of whiskey in his hand. His eyes were bloodshot, unfocused. He'd been fired again, I'd find that out later, and had spent his last unemployment check on alcohol. Marcus, honey, let me help you to bed, I said softly, approaching him like you would a wounded animal. Don't honey me, he slurred, taking another swig from the bottle. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Saint Dorothy, the long-suffering mother. I don't think that, baby. I just want to help you. Help me, he laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You want to help me? Then get out of my life. You suffocate me. You've always suffocated me. Dad knew it too. That's why he could barely stand to be in the same room with you those last years. The words cut deep, but I pushed through. Your father loved me, and I love you. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Just please put down the bottle and shut up. He roared, and suddenly he was moving toward me, fast despite his drunkenness. Just shut the hell up with your fake concern and your pathetic voice. He grabbed me by my shoulders, his fingers digging into my flesh through the robe. The pain was immediate and sharp. He shook me, my head snapping back and forth, my teeth clicking together. Marcus, stop, you're hurting me. Good, he shouted into my face, his breath reeking of alcohol. Maybe that'll teach you to leave me alone. He shoved me backward with tremendous force. I stumbled, my feet tangling in the belt of my robe, and crashed into the kitchen table. The edge caught me right in the small of my back, and white-hot pain exploded through my body. I crumpled to the floor, gasping, unable to catch my breath. But he wasn't done. He stood over me, his face twisted with rage, and I saw his hand coming before I could protect myself. The slap connected with my cheek with a crack that echoed through the kitchen. My head whipped to the side, my vision exploding in stars. I tasted blood immediately. He'd split my lip against my own teeth. I lay there on my kitchen floor, the cold linoleum against my back, staring up at my son. For a moment, our eyes met, and I hoped I'd see remorse, horror at what he'd done, but there was nothing. Just empty rage and then indifference. He straightened up, took another drink from his bottle, and stepped over me like I was a piece of furniture. I heard his heavy footsteps on the stairs, heard his bedroom door slam, and then nothing but silence and the sound of my own ragged breathing. I don't know how long I lay there, long enough for the pain to sharpen from shock into pure agony. Long enough for the blood from my lip to pool on the floor beneath my cheek. Long enough to understand that something fundamental had broken in my life, and there was no putting it back together the old way. Eventually, I pulled myself up. Every movement sent pain radiating through my back and neck. I managed to get to my feet using the table for support and stumbled to the half-bath off the kitchen. The face in the mirror was almost unrecognizable, left cheek already swelling and darkening, lips split and puffy, eyes wide and shocked. I cleaned my face with shaking hands, the cold water stinging the open wound. I stared at myself for a long time, watching the bruise develop, watching my reflection blur as tears filled my eyes, and then slowly something changed. The grief and shock began to harden into something else, something cold and clear and absolutely certain. This was the last time. The very last time my son would ever raise his hand to me. I left the bathroom and stood in my kitchen, looking around at the home I'd lived in for 43 years, the home where I'd raised my child, buried my husband, and now been assaulted by my own flesh and blood. The kitchen clock read 12:47 a.m. I had hours until dawn, hours until Marcus would wake up, probably hungover, probably expecting me to have cleaned up his mess and prepared his breakfast like nothing had happened. But something had happened, and I was going to make sure he understood exactly what. I went to my bedroom and changed out of my blood-stained robe into comfortable clothes, jeans, a soft sweater, my sneakers. I pulled my hair back into a ponytail. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I locked my bedroom door from the inside. If Marcus woke up, if he came looking for me, he wouldn't be getting in. I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand and made the first call. My best friend, Helen Washington, lived 3 blocks away. We'd known each other for 50 years, taught at the same school, raised our children together. Helen had been widowed 6 years before Frank died, and we'd become each other's primary support system. The phone rang 4 times before her sleepy voice answered. Dorothy, what's wrong? It's 1 in the morning. Helen, I need you. Something's happened with Marcus. The sleep vanished from her voice instantly. What did he do? Are you safe? I'm safe for now. He's passed out upstairs, but Helen, he hit me. He shoved me and he hit me, and I can't do this anymore. There was a brief silence, and then Helen's voice came back, hard as steel. I'm getting dressed right now. Do not open that door until you hear my voice. Do you understand me? I understand, and Dorothy, we're calling the police. I know, but I need you here first. My voice broke. I need someone on my side when I do this. I've always been on your side, Dorothy Mitchell. I'll be there in 10 minutes. She hung up and I sat there trembling, phone still clutched in my hand. Then I made the second call. Pastor Williams had been the minister at Friendship Baptist Church for 30 years. He'd married Frank and me, baptized Marcus, presided over Frank's funeral. He was a man of God, but he was also a practical man who understood that faith sometimes required action. He answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. Sister Dorothy, what's happened? I told him all of it. The years of escalation, tonight's violence, my split lip and bruised face. When I finished, there was a long pause. Sister Dorothy, you know what needs to happen here. I do, Pastor, but I need your blessing. I need to know that what I'm about to do, turning my son in, isn't a sin. The sin, Pastor Williams said firmly, was committed against you. A man who raises his hand to his mother has broken one of God's fundamental commandments. Honor thy father and thy mother, Dorothy. He dishonored you in the worst way possible. Protecting yourself, seeking justice, that's not a sin, that's survival, that's righteousness. Will you come tomorrow morning around 8? I took a deep breath. I'm going to make him breakfast. I'm going to set the table like nothing's wrong. And then I'm going to have the police waiting for him. Another pause. That's a hard thing you're planning, sister. It's the hardest thing I'll ever do. But if I don't do it this way, if I just call the police right now in the middle of the night, he'll know I called them. He'll be defensive, angry, violent. This way he'll see what he's lost. He'll understand the consequences. You want witnesses. I want witnesses. I want him to face his community, his church, his mother, and the law all at once. I want him to be sober when it happens. I want him to remember. I'll be there at 8 sharp, Pastor Williams said. And Dorothy, I'm proud of you. This took more courage than most people will ever have to find. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of my bedroom, listening to the house settle around me, listening for any sound from Marcus's room. Nothing. He was sleeping off his drunk, unaware that his life was about to change forever. I unlocked my door and crept downstairs to the kitchen. Helen would be here soon, but I needed to start preparing, not just the meal that would come later, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I needed to armor myself against the guilt that was already trying to creep in, the mother's instinct that screamed at me to protect my child no matter what he'd done. I looked at the spot on the floor where I'd lain bleeding just an hour ago. The blood had dried into a dark stain on the linoleum. I didn't clean it up, let it stay, let it be evidence. I heard a soft knock at the back door, Helen's knock, the one we'd used for 50 years. I let her in, and the moment I saw her face, the tears came. She gathered me into her arms, this strong, beautiful black woman who'd survived her own trials, and let me cry. Let me see, she said finally, pulling back and gently tilting my face toward the light. Her expression hardened when she saw the bruise, the split lip. That boy, that ungrateful, foolish boy. I'm turning him in, Helen. I'm really doing it. Good, it's past time. But Dorothy, honey, are you sure about this breakfast plan? Why not just call the police right now? I told her what I'd told Pastor Williams, that I needed Marcus to be sober, to face what he'd done in the light of day, to see the consequences assembled before him like a jury. Helen nodded slowly. Okay, then I'm staying. We're going to cook this meal together, and I'm going to be sitting at that table when he comes down. And when the police come, I'm going to make sure they understand exactly what kind of man they're dealing with. She looked around my kitchen, at the broken vase still in pieces by the door, at the blood on the floor, at the general disarray that came from violence. But first, we're going to document everything. Get your phone. For the next hour, Helen and I methodically photographed every sign of Marcus's rampage. The broken vase, the blood, the crack in the wall where he'd slammed a door months ago, the dent in the refrigerator where he'd kicked it. We took photos of my face from every angle, making sure the bruising and split lip were clearly visible. Then Helen made me sit down while she got an ice pack for my face and checked my back where I'd hit the table. You might have bruised ribs, she said. We should take you to the hospital. After, I said, after the police come, after this is done, I can't leave now, I need to see this through. She didn't argue, just nodded and went to make coffee, strong black coffee to get us through the night. At 3 o'clock, I started cooking. Helen tried to talk me out of it, said I should rest, but I needed to move, needed to do something with my hands or I'd lose my nerve. I pulled out my largest cast iron skillet, the one Frank gave me for our 10th anniversary, and began preparing what would be Marcus's last meal in my house. Biscuits first. I made them from scratch the way my grandmother taught me: flour, buttermilk, butter, baking powder. My hands moved automatically through the familiar motions, measuring, mixing, kneading. Each batch went into the oven on my good sheet pans, the ones I'd bought online that had a special nonstick coating. They came out perfect, golden brown, steaming. While the biscuits baked, I made sausage gravy, thick and peppery. I scrambled eggs with cheese. I fried bacon until it was crispy. I made grits the way Marcus liked them, creamy with butter and a little sharp cheddar melted in. I sliced fresh fruit, strawberries, cantaloupe, grapes. Helen watched me work, occasionally helping but mostly just being there, a solid presence in the chaos of my emotions. "You're making enough food for an army," she observed. "I need him to see this. I need him to see everything I've given him, everything I've done for him, all laid out before him one last time, and then I need him to see it taken away." By 6:30, the food was ready. The kitchen smelled amazing, like Sunday morning after church, like celebrations and love and family. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. I set the dining room table with my good dishes, the blue-rimmed china that had been my mother's. I used the white linen tablecloth Frank and I received as a wedding gift. I arranged the food in serving dishes, everything beautiful and appetizing. I set 4 places, one for me at the head of the table, one for Helen to my right, one for Pastor Williams to my left, and one at the far end for Marcus. At 7:45, I made the call I'd been dreading: Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. I asked for Officer James Bradley, a member of our church who'd known Marcus since he was a child. "Officer Bradley, this is Dorothy Mitchell from Friendship Baptist." "Sister Dorothy, is everything all right?" "No, James, I need to report a domestic violence incident. My son Marcus assaulted me last night. I'm filing charges and I need you to come to my house at 8:30 this morning to arrest him." There was a heavy pause. Marcus did what? He shoved me into a table and slapped me across the face hard enough to split my lip. "I have photographs. I have witnesses who will be here. But James, I need you to wait until 8:30. I'm doing this a specific way. Can you do that for me?" "Sister Dorothy, if you're in danger right now." "I'm not. He's still asleep. My friend Helen is here with me. Pastor Williams is coming. I just need you to wait until 8:30 and then come to the house. Please." Another long pause. "Okay. I'll be there at 8:30 sharp with another officer. But Sister Dorothy, if anything changes, if he wakes up and threatens you, you call 911 immediately. Promise me." "I promise." At 8 o'clock exactly, Pastor Williams knocked on the front door. He came in, took one look at my face, and his jaw tightened. "Sister Dorothy, Pastor." He hugged me carefully, aware of my injuries. Then he greeted Helen and surveyed the elaborate breakfast spread. "This is quite a production." "It needs to be," I said simply. We took our positions at the table. I sat at the head, Helen and Pastor Williams on either side of me. The 4th place setting sat empty, waiting. We didn't eat. We just sat there in silence, the smell of the food filling the room, the morning light streaming through the windows. At 8:15, I heard movement upstairs, water running, footsteps in the hallway. My heart began to pound, but I kept my hands folded in my lap, my expression calm. Marcus came down the stairs slowly. I could tell he had a hangover from the careful way he moved. I heard him in the kitchen first, probably getting water, probably seeing the remaining food on the stove, and then I heard his footsteps coming toward the dining room. He appeared in the doorway, and for a moment we just looked at each other. He was wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, his hair standing up, his face puffy from sleep and alcohol. His eyes were bloodshot, and he squinted against the morning light. Then he took in the scene, the elaborate meal, the fancy dishes, the table set like a holiday. He looked at me, and I saw him notice the bruise on my face, the split lip. But instead of horror or remorse, I saw something that made my blood run cold: satisfaction. Pride, a slow smile spread across his face. "Well, well," he said, his voice rough from sleep. "Look at this. You finally learned your place, didn't you, Mama?" He walked into the room like a king entering his court, completely oblivious to Helen and Pastor Williams sitting at the table. "I gotta say, I didn't think you had it in you to admit when you're wrong, but this," he gestured at the food, "this is perfect. This is exactly what I've been trying to get through your thick skull. Respect, that's all a man needs from his mother, a little respect." He pulled out his chair and sat down, reaching for a biscuit. "You know what Dad used to say. He'd say, 'Marcus, your mama's too soft, she needs a firm hand sometimes.' I never understood what he meant until recently, but now Marcus," I said quietly, and something in my tone made him stop mid-reach for the butter. "Look at the table." His eyes, which had been focused on the food, finally registered the other people sitting there. His hand froze. The color drained from his face as he saw Helen's expression of cold fury, saw Pastor Williams's disappointment, saw me sitting there with my bruised face and split lip. "What?" he started but couldn't seem to finish the sentence. Marcus Hayes, Pastor Williams's deep voice filled the room. Do you see what you've done to your mother? Marcus's eyes darted around the table, landing on each of us in turn, understanding slowly dawning that this wasn't what he thought it was. This isn't pastor, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, the pastor interrupted. I understand that you've betrayed every principle you were taught in this church. I understand that you've dishonored your mother and your father's memory, and I understand that the consequences of your actions are about to arrive. As if on cue, there was a knock at the front door, firm, official, the kind of knock that changes lives. Marcus went from confused to terrified in seconds. Mama, what did you do? What did you do? I stood up, my back screaming in protest, but my resolve absolute. I did what I should have done months ago. I chose my own life over your violence. I walked to the front door and opened it. Officer Bradley stood there in uniform, his face grave, with another officer beside him. Sister Dorothy, Officer Bradley, thank you for coming. My son Marcus is in the dining room. The evidence of last night's assault is documented in photographs on my phone, and these witnesses, I gestured to Helen and Pastor Williams, who had come to stand behind me, can testify to my condition this morning. Marcus appeared in the hallway, his face a mask of panic. James. Mama, please don't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. Marcus Hayes, Officer Bradley's voice was formal, professional. I need you to place your hands behind your back. No, no, no. Marcus backed up, looking at me desperately. Mama, please. I'm your son, you can't do this to me. What would Dad say? That was the question that almost broke me. But I thought about Frank, about the strong, honorable man he'd been, about the values he'd tried to instill in Marcus. And I knew exactly what Frank would say. Your father, I said, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face, would say that a man who raises his hand to a woman, especially his own mother, isn't a man at all. He'd say that I'm doing the right thing, the hard thing, but the right thing. Officer Bradley moved forward with handcuffs. Marcus looked like he might run, but the second officer positioned himself at the back door. There was nowhere to go. Please, Marcus whispered as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Mama, please. I love you, Marcus, I said, and I meant it. But I love myself more, and I will not spend whatever years I have left being afraid in my own home. Officer Bradley read Marcus's rights, that familiar litany I'd only ever heard on TV. Marcus cried, big gulping sobs as they led him toward the door. He looked back at me one last time, his face a mess of tears and desperation. I'm sorry, he choked out. I know you are, I replied, but sorry doesn't heal bruises, Marcus. Sorry doesn't give me back my sense of safety. Sorry is just a word you've used too many times before. They led him out to the patrol car. I stood in my doorway, Helen on one side and Pastor Williams on the other, and watched as my son was placed in the back of a police car and driven away from my life. The silence after they left was profound. I stood there until the car was out of sight, and then my legs simply gave out. Helen and Pastor Williams caught me, guided me back inside, helped me to the couch. It's done, Helen said softly. It's over. But it wasn't over, not really. It was just beginning. The legal process took months. Marcus was charged with domestic battery, a misdemeanor on first offense but serious enough that he faced jail time. The prosecutor, a woman named Sharon Martinez, was firm and compassionate when she met with me. Mrs. Mitchell, I want you to know that you did the right thing. The statistics show that domestic violence, once it starts, almost always escalates. You likely saved your own life by reporting this. Marcus's public defender tried to get me to agree to drop the charges, painted a picture of a troubled young man who'd made a mistake, who'd lost his father and his way. But I held firm. I provided the photographs, the witnesses' statements, the documented history of escalating behavior. The judge was an older black woman named Henderson who'd seen too many cases like this. She looked at Marcus, then at me, then back at Marcus. Mr. Hayes, she said, your mother has shown you more mercy than you showed her. She could have called the police immediately and had you arrested in the middle of the night. Instead, she gave you the dignity of a final meal, the opportunity to see what you destroyed. She gave you witnesses from your community, people who cared about you, so you'd understand the full weight of your actions. That takes a kind of strength and love I'm not sure you deserve. She sentenced him to 6 months in county jail and 2 years of probation, with mandatory substance abuse counseling and anger management classes. You are banned from your mother's home for the duration of your probation, Judge Henderson continued. If she chooses to see you after that, it will be on her terms in public places at her discretion. Do you understand? Marcus, thin and hollow-eyed after 2 months already in jail awaiting trial, could only nod. I attended the sentencing, but I didn't speak to him. I couldn't, not yet. The house felt enormous without him, empty but also peaceful in a way it hadn't been in years. Helen helped me repaint the rooms, patch the walls, replace the broken items. We turned Marcus's old bedroom into a sewing room, a space that was mine, for my hobbies with no trace of him left. I started therapy with a counselor who specialized in domestic violence. Dr. Patricia Chen helped me understand that what I'd experienced was abuse, helped me process the guilt that kept trying to creep in, helped me see that loving my son didn't require sacrificing myself. The church community rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. Some people blamed me, said I should have been more forgiving, said I'd failed as a mother. But most people understood. They'd seen the changes in Marcus, had heard rumors of his behavior, had worried about me. They brought me casseroles, sat with me when the loneliness got overwhelming, reminded me that I deserved peace. Marcus wrote me letters from jail. The first few were angry, blaming, full of accusations. I read them once and put them away, but gradually they changed. The anger gave way to something else, genuine remorse, understanding, grief for what he'd lost. Mama, one letter read, I'm sober now, really sober, and I can see clearly for the first time in years what I did to you, to our home, to Dad's memory. I understand why you did what you did. I hate it. I hate being here, but I understand it. You stopped me, Mama. You stopped me from becoming someone completely lost. Thank you doesn't feel like enough, but thank you. I cried when I read that letter. Not tears of forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that yet, but tears of hope. Maybe, just maybe, my son was still in there somewhere. 6 months later, Marcus was released. He went into a halfway house, got a job working at a warehouse, attended his meetings. He didn't try to contact me directly, respecting the boundaries the court had set. It was a year before I was ready to see him. I chose a neutral place, a coffee shop in Broad Ripple, public, safe, with Helen waiting at a table nearby just in case. The man who walked in wasn't the Marcus who'd left my house in handcuffs. He was thinner, his eyes clear, his posture different, less entitled, more humble. He saw me and stopped, his face a mixture of hope and fear. We sat across from each other, two people who shared blood and history and an unbridgeable chasm of pain. Mama, he said quietly, Marcus. We talked for an hour, not about reconciliation or forgiveness, but about facts. His job, his sobriety, his therapy, my life, my peace, my boundaries. It was awkward and painful and necessary. I'm not asking to come home, he said at the end. I'm not asking for things to go back to how they were. I need you to know that I understand what I did. I understand what I lost. And I'm trying to become someone who would never do that again. I hope you succeed, I said honestly. Not for me, but for you. You deserve to be better than you were. We meet now once a month, always in public, always with clear boundaries. It's not the relationship I dreamed of when I held him as a baby, but it's honest, it's safe, and maybe someday it will be something more. Today, I'm sitting on my front porch, watching the morning glories climb toward the sun. My house is peaceful. My body has healed, the bruises faded, the lip healed without a scar. My spirit is still healing, probably will be for a long time, but I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not walking on eggshells. I'm not making excuses or accepting unacceptable behavior. I'm just living peacefully in the home I've earned. Some people still ask me if I regret what I did, if I think I was too harsh. My answer is always the same. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my son became someone capable of violence. But I do not regret choosing my own life, my own peace, my own safety. A mother's love is supposed to be unconditional, but it's not supposed to be self-destructive. I saved my son by stopping him, by forcing him to face consequences he'd avoided for too long. And I saved myself by remembering that my life has value too. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If this story resonated with you, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.